Hello and welcome to another edition of Storytelling on Orchard Street. I'm your host, Pete Solomita, and we're in the podcast studios at P&T Knitwear Bookstore at 180 Orchard Street. My guest today is Jane LeCroy. She's a New York-based poet, singer, performance artist, and home-birthing mother of three, who fronts the avant-pop band the Icebergs and the spontaneous experimental music project Ω Ohmslice. She has toured with the San Francisco-based all-women's poetry troupe Sister Split. She also performs as a featured character in the immersive theater experience Poetry Brothel in New York City. Among her many publications and recordings, her chapbook Names was published by the art book house Booklyn, and the award-winning ABC chapbook series that was purchased by the Library of Congress along with her Braid. Wow. Three Rooms Press published Signature Play, a multimedia book of lyrical poems, including a nomination for a Pushcart Prize. Pink Trees Press just published, or is about to publish, a full-length poetry collection called Spellbook of Ordinary Mistakes in 2024. The Smithsonian has many of her poems included in their Fast Folk archive, all available through the Smithsonian. Jane teaches poetry all over New York City and publishes her work at the uptownstories.org. Oops.
Gosh, well, you make me sound so cool.
Welcome. Well, this is your stuff. You are cool. I'm impressed.
Thanks.
So I like to get back, as I told you earlier, I like to get to know the background of my guests before they were a creative person. But I have to say, how the hell do you find time to do all this and have three kids? That's my first question.
Well, I am a kid person.
Okay.
I work with kids, and I always wanted kids, and I actually prefer the company of children to adults.
Oh, okay.
A lot.
Right.
Or often.
Right.
Not always, but
right.
I actually really love being with children because of their perspective and their raw attachment to their experience that isn't corrupted by life. Capitalism yet. Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Life.
And what's valuable to them is what's just purely valuable to them. They see right. what they see. They say what they see. It's not clouded with judgments or whatever. They're just so curious. And
right.
it's
and they could be very creative because they haven't had the creativity beat out of them.
Yes, they're naturally right. creative forces. They're
right.
little explorers out
right.
in the world. And I love holding space for them
right.
and inviting them to have their own experiences and record them and reflect on them and shape them. So
we're going to talk more about that because that's a big part of what you do, or one of the many things you do, I should say. But just to give the listeners or viewers, whatever way they're digesting this, a little background on where you grew up, how you became Jane, the multifaceted artistic person.
Well, I really was born this way.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Nyack, New York.
Oh, okay.
Right, pretty close to where I live now in Washington Heights. I
right.
always make the joke that I live in upstate Manhattan.
Huh.
And it, whatever. Nyack is this cute little river town. I was definitely excited to get out of it.
How close is it? You said. When you said it's close, how close
you can see it.
Really?
If you ever there's a bridge right after the George Washington Bridge up the river. You could see it from the George Washington Bridge.
Right.
It's the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Right.
I mean, it's technically not named that anymore.
No, I know.
But
I still call
definitely
it that too.
still calling it that.
I know, it's stuck in my head too.
It's such a cooler word, and
right.
it's such a, it has an historical meaning that's so much better than a politician's name.
Right.
But anyway.
So it's up by Sleepy Hollow or...
It's even closer. It's right across from the Bronx.
Right, okay.
And
right.
it's, I would cut school when I was a teenager and get on the 9A bus.
Huh.
And it would take me right into the neighborhood where I live now. And I'd take the subway down here and
wow.
go to Bleecker Bob's
you
Records
did. As
and
a
Canal
teenager.
Jeans.
Look at you.
Yeah, totally.
Wild girl, you.
Well, it was very close.
Is this how your parents are going to find out about it?
No, my parents were far wilder than I was.
Oh, okay. That's funny.
So, yeah, I came from really,
So it's a small town.
A very small town.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like with an old Main Street and a Main Street? But
Actually, Main Street and Broadway. So
okay.
close.
Right.
You know, it has the Main Street and the Broadway, and it has a lot of businesses. And
Right.
when I grew up there in the 1970s, it was very practical. There was like an Army Navy store, a grocery store, a Woolworths, this fabric store called So What's New.
Old school Woolworths.
Yeah. With a soda fountain.
I was
going
to
to
say with the counter.
Yeah, and there was this
I had a
Skylark
Woolworths in my
diner.
town too, in Rockville Center, Long Island. Yeah.
So it's not much different than
Right.
a place in Long Island. The same kind of like little Victorian settlement town and
Right.
little businesses.
Right.
Now it's a fancy town and it's rich, and
Right.
it has a whole different vibe. And
Right. I get it.
Yeah,
There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
all those stores are gone. There's no more grocery store or fabric store or you know what I mean. It's all like
Chic things.
high end.
Right. So, were your parents creative people? You said they were wild.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, my dad is a carpenter and musician and poet.
Okay. Wow.
And my mom is a writer. She was never really a performer, but she wrote lots of stories and is definitely really creative. I came from a very literary family.
Wow.
My grandmother played piano and knew tons of poems by heart, and I was also raised Catholic.
I was raised Catholic too, but my parents didn't have any of that. They weren't at all artistic or musically inclined or anything. Yeah, I had to find my own way.
Yeah, I really grew up in a house full of music. My dad had a band.
Okay.
And he was a cocaine dealer.
Oh.
In the 1980s.
He was probably a very popular person.
My house had a name. It was called the Sugar Shack.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't. No friends were allowed to come over. And
right. For good reason.
Parents warned their kids, no, don't hang out with Jane.
Oh, no.
I know,
really?
it was terrible.
Wow.
But, I ended up okay. It's
right.
fine.
So I guess you must have started with the arts early.
Yeah, I was writing poems as soon as I could. I loved the idea of books. I loved books.
Right.
Before I could even write, I would pretend to write. Like I'd just open a book and make little squigglies and pretend it was writing. And then I would even read it and just be improvisational.
So did you? So it was natural. It was in your environment. But did you study it? Like did you pass high school? I mean.
As my grandmother was a teacher and she was really close to me, and we really did talk about poetry, taking it apart, talking about different parts of speech and meter and rhyme and why some things are easy to memorize and why some things aren't, and how with poetry the meaning changes all the time, and that it's like this open invitation to think about things. It never means one thing. And, you can read the same poem for 50 years and it means something different every time you read it. And it really is like that. It really is like this magical portal that just gives you a window onto the familiar.
So the more you learn about life and poetry, the poetry changes for you. Is that what you're saying? Kind of?
Yeah. Like my own poems, my favorite famous poems I don't like, I end up liking. Poems I loved, I end up not liking. Right. Like a good example
so it's a fluid thing.
Yeah. When I was really little, I loved Robert Frost.
Okay.
His images are so clear, lots of rhyme. His poems are short. I really felt like I understood them. Right. I loved Robert Frost when I was little.
Okay.
Then in my 20s, I really started thinking Robert Frost was cheesy.
Huh.
And I wasn't into Robert
so
Frost
you rebelled
anymore.
Against him.
Yeah, exactly. Then in my 30s, I started realizing, oh my God, these poems are actually amazing. They're not these trite little things that I had a new experience with them. And as I get older still, I'm always finding new things. And especially because I teach his poetry to so many kids, I'm just fascinated that after all these years of teaching it, students are always noticing new things about his poems that I never saw before or that no other kid saw before.
Wow.
And that's just regular. It's like all the poems and all the people are special. That's just, everything is actually amazing. That's why those things like, Humans of New York or whatever.
Right.
If you just talk to any person, everyone is just this magical creature that came from this soup of trauma and lived through it, lived to tell their tale and be a person. And It's very inspiring.
Right. Sounds like it. You're inspiring me.
Oh,
you know,
good.
I'm glad you're saying that. This is going to be a funny thing to admit, but I admit that poetry is as old as I am, and I am 66, so I'm not a young guy. I was always really into music, and I liked song lyrics, but I never really, and I read books, but I never really read poetry, and I didn't take any poetry classes, you know. And I just started writing, whatever it was, 8 years ago, 7, I don't remember. But I never wrote either. And when I occasionally tried to write, it was like, oh, this is awful, and I would throw it away. I was in a punk band once, and I wrote 2 songs, but that was
What was the band?
It was called Brain Dead. And,
Here in New York?
Yeah, local thing. Yeah.
Here from the Lower East Side?
I left the band, and my friend who plays guitar on the intro, who we work together now, we're both drummers. He took over for me after I left, and they changed the name to Ed Gein's Car. So they were, you know, a really good punk band, and they had their day here. But the point I'm making is, I'm glad you're saying that, because I struggle, and I don't struggle writing the way I write, but I struggle with understanding what other people are writing.
Well, it's because poetry isn't taught, it's not given to people in the correct spirit. It is given to people like writing, like you're supposed to understand it.
Right.
But that's what books are for and newspaper articles. Poetry is something different. Understanding is overrated. You don't have to understand something. It's a feeling.
Right.
It's a feeling, and it raises questions in you, and it opens you. So you're finally letting go of understanding your attachment to, I know what this means. I know what it's like, we really don't know what any of it means, and we're floating through this world, trying to grab onto things. We make sense. That's what humans do. Things don't make sense. We make them make sense. We organize our thoughts and our experiences, and it's just... our flower is meaning, like how each life cycle, each living thing has its flower, has the thing that makes the seeds and blows away, the thing that blooms and withers. And for humans, it is meaning.
You talk poetry. I think we can transcribe some of this. You got a new poem.
These are the things I think about.
You're pretty intense. In a nice way.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to be nice.
So I have a feeling we're not going to have any problem talking.
Right.
And there's a lot to talk about. So let's get a poem in.
Okay, sure.
Before we go too far. So find something to read.
All right.
Because we're already 14 minutes into the show.
All right. I'm going to read this one.
Okay.
It's good because we have Valentine's Day coming up.
Right.
And I think I'm actually going to perform this poem at Poetry Brothel.
Okay.
Which is, we're performing right in this neighborhood.
That's a great lead. Let's talk about that after you read it.
You came to love and be loved. Find yourself at the edge of your nightmares by the torn map of your soul, rubbed illegible in the places you found yourself but never believed. How hard you studied the map at those moments, trying to discern some topography to navigate through. You looked so hard your eyes bore holes in the paper. Your fingers wore away the map where you traced so many times, hoping to find your way, practicing in your mind. You are on the shore of the unknown ocean that is the future. The sand you stand upon is the remnants of your days, ground up memories, a shifting surface that sucks you in. Keep stepping so you do not sink. The sun and moon enact their predictable loops, even though you're the one on the moving body. It's not always what you think. It feels as if you are still, but you are speeding through space, stung and wounded by your profound losses, but propelled by your gnawing hunger that is the claw of desire that climbs the rungs of light, constructing your landscape like a careless painter who happens to be making the world of which you are a part, but can never organize into a picture enough to really see your way ahead and understand. You can make out one thing: that you came to love and be loved. You came to love and be loved. You came to love and be loved. And the smudges that build the stains that are the map are the ink of your mistakes and triumphs, interlocking lines that can never be untangled. The scribble makes up everything and is dependent on all of it. There is nothing wasted. There is nothing extra. There is nothing that is unimportant. There is nothing certain as your existence among and through it. It breathes and moves, and you ravel and unravel. Repeat. You came to love and be loved.
Wow. So you have a great voice. Were you in theater?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, Poetry Brothel is theater.
Right, but I mean...
I was in plays. I was a ham. I love attention.
Yeah.
I was always trying to, do shows.
Right.
In fourth grade, I pretended I could tap dance so that I could be in this play where I was this wolf, and I was Cuthbert Cudevine. I just tap danced the whole show, and I didn't really know how to tap dance. I just made it up. I just loved that kind of stuff.
Do you play an instrument?
Well, I was raised by my dad plays like everything, and I had a piano and all these musical instruments, but I did not want to be like my dad, so I resisted music. But then I ended up being, I'm a singer.
Right.
But I don't play an instrument. I play with instruments.
Right.
But
all right, so we'll get to that, but let's go back to Poetry Brothel. Explain what that is.
Oh yeah, so Poetry Brothel is part of Poetry Society of New York,
which is
it's the Poetry Society of New York. Its most notable thing is that it creates that huge poetry festival every summer on Governor's Island.
Oh, okay.
You know those that big. So
I haven't gone to that yet, but yeah,
it's so fun.
Right.
It's really amazing. So Governor's Island turns into Poetry Island, and there are all these publishers and poets and readings and stages, and it's basically just a poetry festival with lots of books and poets and poems and nerdy poets talking about poetry. And it's really fun.
You must love it.
I love it. But Poetry Brothel is an immersive theater. It works just like a brothel, but instead of getting sex, you get poetry.
Okay.
So there's all these poetry whores, and you go in, and there's this, a madam who introduces you to the whores, and we have special currency, which is they look like poker tokens. Okay. And we have those because, it is capitalism, and it's like if you buy one token, it's $10, but if you buy 5, it's $15, and if you buy 20, it's what I mean. So it's and then those tokens are used to pay for your private poetry readings from the poetry whores. You get to go into a little spot and get poemed hard.
That's really unique.
It's really fun.
That's very New York.
It is. It's really, and it's really fun to have a sexy experience that's not the pressure of sex or what you know what I mean. So it's really just super fun.
And where does this take place?
We do it in a bunch of different places, like the House of Yes and the Back Room. The one that's coming up this Valentine's Day in just a couple days is at Drom. In this neighborhood. The Back Room's also in this neighborhood. It's
this is going to air after. I think it's probably going to air after Valentine's Day. But okay.
We have our poetry brothels
So how do people find out about this?
You can just look up Poetry Brothel on your computer or your device. Follow us on Instagram. We post our shows.
Just take the Google out.
Exactly. Poetry Brothel. And it's actually all over the world. So look for New York City. But there's, a very active one in LA, one in London, one in Delhi. Wow. I mean, how
long has this been a thing?
For I think 12 years now.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And how long you been part of it?
For 7 years.
All right. You really want to take a sip of that, don't you?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, I'll let you take a break. I'll fill in the dead air. Okay.
Yeah, drinks.
I hear you. It's Sunday. You need the juice.
Yeah. All the days.
So Poetry Brothel sounds really cool.
And so we also, it's not just poetry. It's tarot card readings. We have jewelry for sale. Yeah, there's face painters. There's this great sketch artist.
Snacks? People are going to want to know if there's snacks.
Yes. We have VIP tickets where you get a whole dinner and you get to sit in the VIP area and have
It's
food.
like a big event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And each one is a little different because it
Right.
depends on the venue or whatever. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like
Okay.
what kind of space. But it's really, really fun. It's basically like a kid party
Right.
for grown-ups.
Wow.
You know, there's face painting
Right.
and all these different things, and you get to buy with your tokens and
Yeah.
have these. It's very open and exciting and fun and funny.
Right.
And I love the audience. Everyone really gets into it and comes dressed up, and it's really just it's so much fun.
Sounds great. So, obviously, you wrote poetry from the time you were practically
Right away.
yeah, almost right after you started talking.
Yep.
When did you get when did you make it more formal, or when was your first publication or book?
Gosh.
Or
Well, I guess.
and then when did you go the next step and read in poem?
Yeah, I had a poem published in 5th grade in my school's
Wow.
little magazine.
Okay,
You
right.
know, made by Ditto Machines.
Right. You remember the Ditto machine?
Yeah.
Wow. See, we can go in a million directions.
Yeah.
Because my friend who published my book does art with mimeograph art.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
he just did he's in Iowa, and he's an archivist. But he just recently last year he did some workshops at the Center for Media Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found out today there's a fanzine exhibition at Brooklyn
Yes.
Museum, and I took pictures. I told him I sent him a picture of it, and he didn't respond right away. But when he did, he said he's coming because his where he works they have work there.
Yes.
But so most people don't know what a Ditto or a mimeograph machine
Right.
is. I have no idea. Right.
You know, I'm totally from the 90s, and I
Yeah.
made lots of zines, and I still make
But-
zines.
right.
And for those of you that don't know, zines, it comes from magazine.
Right.
And they were really revolutionized by the Xerox machine more than the Ditto
Right.
machine, because there was nowhere you could go get Dittos. You had to
Right.
work someplace
Right.
that had
Ditto
it.
machines were things that we had in the schools, before they had
or-
copiers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They were actual ink.
Yes,
And-
and a
right.
photo, and
Right,
they
yeah.
were wet, and
Yeah.
they were like this whole other machine.
It's whole yeah.
Yeah, like
You still had that in your school?
oh yeah.
But you look really young to me.
No, I'm 50.
Okay. But so they're
I'm
still
from
around.
1973.
I know. Okay. I don't know when they stopped using those. Probably in the 80s.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. When
No,
yeah, in
maybe
the late
before.
80s,
Yeah, I don't
when
know.
Xerox machines came out and people ended
Right.
up, you could go into, then we had copy shops and we
Right.
had Kinko's.
Sure. Right.
and,
Right.
and then that's when
That's a whole different thing.
zines
Right.
really took off.
Right. Right. So you used to do zines too? Mm-hmm. Okay. You still
And-
have any of them? Your
Oh
old
yeah, I have
zines?
an incredible zine collection.
Did you see the zine collection then? At
Yes.
the book?
Yeah,
What'd
and
you
my
think?
friend Kate Hunt.
It was
has
huge.
stuff
I
in
had.
it. Yeah, I mean, it's
It was
amazing.
surprising how big it was.
It is, and it's so important. And people, we are the media. It's
Right.
us. What we're doing right now.
Right.
Our words, all we have to do is take ourselves seriously enough and present them.
Right.
We are the media. We have power.
What were your zines about? Poetry or?
Mostly, you know, they had poetry in them, and they had my manifestos and diatribes about, you know, smash the patriarchy
Right.
and anti-capitalism and anarchy, and you know, they were very
So
political.
you were a punk.
Oh yeah,
kid.
totally.
Were you like really seriously into the whole punk thing? or
Yes,
just-
and
yeah.
I was in a punk band.
Right.
I was in Vita-Pup.
Okay.
I don't know if they were in the 90s, and
Right.
I was not like in the band, but I am on their records and performed all their shows. I would do poetry during their set.
Uh-huh.
So they
So-
weren't playing with me, but
Right.
I was part of their, and I'm on their records. And
When did you
stuff.
marry the poetry to music?
Okay, that is an interesting. I did always make up songs, but I didn't take it seriously. I thought it was a joke. And my cousin, she always is reminding me, she's like, Jane, you were always singing since we were little. So
Right.
it's not like, but what ended up happening was in the 90s, I was in college and I started doing a lot of performance
What
poetry at Eugene Lang at the New School.
Okay.
And it's when New Eurekan and slam poetry was really happening.
Okay.
And I really became like a slam poet. But I didn't like that I was turning into this slam poet, that I was making slam poetry, and I totally respect it. But just personally, I was like, I don't want to be a slam poet. I can
Right.
make some of that stuff, but I just felt like, and it was also just the idea of competitive poetry, and it was so like people name dropping and stuff would get the biggest applause. It was actually anti-poetry, and I started not wanting to be in that scene.
Right.
And but regular poetry readings are kind of niche and a little boring. Like only poets like to go to them. Like your friends that aren't into poetry are never going to go to a poetry reading.
That's it really is true.
So I just for fun, I started singing my poems so I could like get more people to listen to them. And my friends who had that band Vita-Pup, I sang one of my poems to Melissa York, the drummer, and she was like, "That's it, Jane. You are fucking performing that tonight." And it was a show at the Continental.
Oh, yeah, Continental. Yeah.
Right, off St. Mark's.
Right.
And, it's a punk club. It's like really loud. And Vita-Pup is a punk band. And I was they stopped and they were like, "All right, now our friend Jane's she's gonna do a poem for you."
Oh, no.
And I sang the poem a cappella.
Right.
And you could hear a pin drop at Continental.
Right.
And it was...
Did they like it?
They loved it.
Oh,
the
cool.
crowd went wild.
Well,
and then I was addicted. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this.
Right.
And that's when that became my performance. I sang most of my songs a cappella. And then there were some crazy musicians that wanted to do stuff with me. So I started doing that.
Right.
But I do resist saying I'm a musician because even though I write melodies and I sing, I don't practice singing.
Right.
I don't read music. I like use music,
right?
So I feel it's like I'm not a real musician, but lo and behold, I make lots of records and write lots of songs,
right?
Which is very punk rock, right?
It is. Well, that's how I view my poetry. It's sort of like I'm not studied. I'm not an educated
But you don't
person.
have. That's the whole thing about poetry.
So I view my poetry kind of almost like folk poetry.
Yes.
Like because it's not classical because I'm not studied and it's
And none of those classical poets are either. Like it always comes from our hearts. They become canonized. They become, they made all those things. And that's why it's, I love writing forms and formal poetry, but it's the equivalent of like playing bebop.
Right.
It's over.
Right.
It's like, yes, people still love bebop and we still listen to it, but it was like a time in history that made this sound. Even punk, even rap, whatever. There's just these different, and the formal poetry we still use elements of it, but to like write in a formal style is equivalent to playing bebop or something. Like playing classical music, it's real and new stuff gets made, but you're not adding to the genre, you're not adding to the world. It's just you're playing the rules.
Right.
But those rules were invented by the people you're copying. So it's like a different thing. You're still just kind of...
But it helps to know the rules too, probably.
Oh, yeah, and it's super fun. Rules are great.
Right.
That's how we know our edges, and that's how we know what to break.
Right.
But rules are for breaking.
Right.
If we just obeyed, which is what a lot of people actually do, we'd end up poisoning the planet, and it would be like mass suicide.
Wow. That's pretty heavy.
It is what's happening.
So how about you read another one?
Sure.
Because we're almost halfway. We're about halfway into the show, so I want to make sure.
Right, yeah, I was wondering.
It goes fast.
Yeah, it does. Let's see. Gosh, there's so many good poems.
It's hard to choose, right?
All right. Here's a controversial one.
Wow, I like that.
Tell lies. Tell lies. Lie, 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 lie. They say lies destroy the world, but lies make the world. There are so many lies, they are actually holding the truth together. Without lies, no one would understand the truth. Just lie to protect the people you love from pain. Just lie to protect yourself. It's so easy to disappoint people. Just tell them what they want to hear. Lies. Tell yourself lies to hold your narrative together. Otherwise, you'll lose hope and hate yourself. Fact is, religion is a lie. Philosophy is lies. Promises are lies because no one knows the future, and they address the mess of your conflicting desires to comfort you and those you care for. Your explanations are lies constructed to justify your insatiable hunger, your insurmountable passions dealt at birth for no reason, no meaning, but for what you make up with your imagination. Lies. It's all a beautiful fiction that creates a map for an infinity, an existence that cannot be mapped except for the map itself is the existence. No one wants the truth. If they say they want the truth, they are lying. Go ahead, tell them the truth, and they will call you a liar.
Cool. So where'd that come from?
The impulse, we want to live these truthful lies, but over and over again, it doesn't help. I don't feel like the truth has served me. When I really am truthful, it just ends up driving people away from me.
Oh.
So it's something I have to learn over and over again, that nope, you know what? People don't want the truth. The truth doesn't help you. And that it's like...
But whose truth?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and also it's because the facts are... there's a great line in Theodore Rothke's poem, The Waking, where he says, "We think by feeling. What is there to know?"
Right.
We think we're logical creatures, but we're emotional creatures.
Right.
And we're always applying logic to solve our emotional problems, and it never works.
We think that's true for everybody? I mean, that's a dumb thing to say.
Well,
Don't you think
nothing
people...
is true for everybody.
Right.
And especially I have a lot of friends who, are different levels of autism, and they have their relationship to reality is so clear, and they don't get muddled up in the feeling parts of things, and I really envy them.
Right.
Their clarity, it's just not like that for me.
Yeah, emotional ties to things can definitely change.
I'm so emotional.
Yeah.
And I'm always acting in my truth. I'm always being truthful. I never lie to people about how I feel about them. But actual events and your experiments, we're experimenting. We are out in our days trying stuff. Right. We don't know what we're doing. And we don't. And we make a lot of mistakes, and we learn that we shouldn't have done that.
Right.
But if you're going to be a risk taker, if you're going to challenge yourself to feel different things, you are going to make a lot of mistakes, break your heart,
I was going to
break
say
hearts.
That part too, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I mean,
yeah, right.
And just, I really always wanted someone that I could be totally honest with, and I just, every time it doesn't work out.
Yeah, it's hard to be completely honest. So I don't know if you have to lie, but you can leave out the truth.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Those are lies. It's all considered lies. Your imagination is lies.
Right.
Religion is a lie. Right. Promises are lies. No one knows the future. A promise is a lie.
Right.
You cannot say, I promise I'm going to come back from Florida.
No.
What if the plane goes down?
You
can't.
Or
it's
you
not
wind up
in
liking
your
it, which I don't know how that's possible.
Right. I mean, it is beautiful, but the people part.
I know.
No, I love a lot of people from Florida, but come on, politics.
So let's talk about, so I know you through, so the first reading I did, I told you I was really new to poetry. And the first reading I did was an open mic. I forgot the name of the place. It was in Williamsburg. Jonathan Berger was the host. And it was the first time I got the nerve to read a poem on stage. At
Pete's Candy Store?
No, it was a different place. It was like a restaurant or something, but it had a back room. And it went over really well. And he goes, "Oh, you should definitely come back and do this again." And then the pandemic hit, and they stopped doing it. I think some people continued on with Zoom. And then when things started opening up again, I was in a band with Phil Gamage. I don't know if you know him. He's a blues singer now. But we were in a band called Voodoo Martini. It was like a Latin lounge swing thing in the 90s. And he said he was going to be reading here, actually, for Wayne Crawl's One Flight Up.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever do Wayne's?
No, I haven't, but I know about it.
Well, now it's not here anymore, but that's another story. It's at 1 and 1, almost across the street. So I came to see Phil, and then I gave Wayne my book, and it was early on. So I got in early on his thing there, and I got early in on this here, the podcast studio, because this was all new. And I came back and did it, and Pauline was one of the readers. So I met her, and I met
Pauline Finlay.
Thank you, Pauline Finlay. I said because you know who she is. Yeah.
Pink Trees Press too.
Exactly. And then Linda and
Ringmaster Sideshow was her book.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, totally. She's an amazing writer. She's like this insane vocabulary.
And the way she performs is like a one-woman play. Yeah.
I actually have been trying, I want her to be in Poetry Brothel. She'd be great poetry whore.
For sure.
Totally.
And Philip and Giambri and Linda Kleinbob were here. And so that was a big thing for me because they told me about some things I should go check out. And, and we've, through the almost 2 years now.
And everyone you've interviewed, I love. Nika Ray.
That was fun.
Such a fan of her. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Megan Gruppo. And
right.
I mean, really every single person. You had Jane Ormerod on here, right?
I have not yet.
Okay.
No.
She's got to come on.
Okay, I'll have to. I don't know her. I mean, we're Facebook friends.
She's from Great Weather for Media, which is another great publication.
Which unfortunately, their features at Parkside stopped.
I mean, it's give them a break. They're going to do something else. But it was like I really respect when things get to come to an end.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I really feel like things have like a 10-year.
Because you don't want to keep doing it just to do it.
Right, exactly.
You don't want it to lose its freshness.
Yes.
But that's how I know you through Linda. That's how I met you.
Yeah.
And they're publishing your new book, right?
Yeah.
When's it due?
Spellbook of Ordinary Mistakes. I mean, technically, it's kind of published. Because you know how they do things now? It's like print on demand.
Oh, okay.
So we're just literally waiting for the first book to make sure there's no mistakes. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So it's really close.
Yeah, it's really close.
Right.
Like it is published.
Right.
We just
so
don't want to tell everyone about it until
I get it.
There's some photos in it, and we're not sure how the printing is going to come out on it.
I get it.
Like that kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Sure. Right. You want to read something from the new book, or have you done that already?
Sure. No, I mean I'd love to.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a random one so the book is very like autobiographical.
Oh.
A lot about my childhood and coming of age and getting married.
Is this the first
and
time you've done
kids.
that in a book?
Yeah, because I was never this old before. This goes from like, my childhood to my midlife breakdown that I'm in the middle of right now.
What do you mean by that?
I checked all the boxes. I did the things.
Right.
I went to school. Mm-hmm. I have this amazing career as this poetry. I'm like a real poet.
Right.
I only do poetry. I teach poetry. I perform poetry. I publish poetry, my poetry, other people's
You're
poetry.
in it.
I inspire poetry. I'm responsible for thousands of poems every year because I work with schools where I literally teach 100 kids a day.
Wow.
Because I'll teach a whole grade.
Huh.
And I get them to write a poem each time.
That's pretty intense.
Isn't it? It's a lot of poetry.
Right.
So
15 years from now, I might be interviewing some of the poets from your
I hope they are incredible. I mean, my students inspire me so much. I love their writing.
Right.
I really do. It's just like it's like poetry is for everybody. We make it. It's not just from these, and you don't have to study it.
Well, let's give a plug for the. I went on and so there was like a 16-year-old poet, and then there was like maybe an 8 or 9-year-old. So what's the age range that you're teaching?
I really teach all ages. Right now, I'm teaching 8 through 17 mostly.
Mm-hmm.
I have mixed ages classes. I've really shifted my teaching. Like I still work in public schools sometimes, but there's this 501c3 called Uptown Stories in my neighborhood that my friend Kate Ruther started. And it is a creative writing after school that kids can come to. And we have comics, romance, horror, fiction, journalism. Wow. I teach the poetry classes.
And people can find this, I guess I read it, but just we're going to reiterate it. It's uptownstories.org.
Yes.
People can find the works of the students.
Yeah, we publish anthologies. We have this, our online magazine called Uptown Ink that has the kids' poetry and writing in it. Definitely check it out.
Right.
It's really cool.
So how much do you guide the students?
Okay.
Like, is it really, you're just helping them get it out of themselves?
Well,
but you're not trying
that's a great question. Yeah. Through all my years of teaching, people decide if they need a guide or not. That's not my job. Uh-huh. I'm there if you need a guide to help guide you. I really see my teaching as holding space for people to be themselves.
Right.
To create space where they have an enriched activity. Like I teach my right now I'm teaching a class at the Cloisters at the Met. It's a junction.
That's a beautiful place to teach. It is.
So I'm we're like literally hanging out with the unicorns, and I'm telling the kids, like, what story do you guys see going on in here?
Right. That's a great place for inspiration.
Yeah. Like, I teach this other class, Poetry Outside, where we're just outside running around, and I bring nature poems, and some days I can read the poem and the whole class is listening. Other days, no one even can hear the poem, or I read it one at a time to each kid. And they can be inspired by that. They can imitate it or not. Right. Some kids need prompts. Right. And then I'll tell each kid a prompt to go with, knowing their work, knowing them. Right. It's the advantage of having a class of like 14 kids for 2 hours instead of a class of 30 kids for 45 minutes. Right. So it's like, really I'm very spoiled. Right. Yeah. And my students come back for years. Like my teenagers that I'm teaching, most of them I've been teaching since they were 8. Wow. So we have this really...
Well, it's a long-term relationship.
Yes, which
almost like what you had with your grandmother.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not something people get.
Right. I feel very in her tradition.
Right.
And that I am her.
Yeah.
And continuing her work. I mean, she was an English teacher. And I totally see myself as continuing her work. And even though my mom didn't perform poetry or run drama chats or do the kind of things my grandma did, she still wrote and loves literature and was wonderful at telling stories, reading stories. We had a totally enriched life full of poetry and fiction. And,
nice.
So.
That's
and
why
my brothers write poetry. It's like
it's really real. Yeah. So let's get back. We don't want to forget about your book.
Oh, yeah.
And you were going to read from it.
Cactus. I didn't believe my grandmother's warning cactus needles weren't a soft aura that surrounded the cactus in entirety like a veil of still smoke suspended. I could not stop myself. When no one was looking, I approached the succulent on the windowsill with its dust. I reached out to touch. Needles that pricked my skin, shocked in pain. My hand jerked away, my breath taken. Tears sprang to my eyes. I swallowed them, having been warned. I was 5 years old, and I knew better. And I didn't, and I do to this day, touch cactus.
Okay. Is that symbolic of putting yourself out there, kind of?
And also...
Not being afraid?
Not being afraid and not believing, even though my everyone said, don't touch it, Jane. Right. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Right. Well, sometimes that's the worst thing to do, though, isn't it?
It is. But
we tell somebody not to do something, especially if you're a bit of a rebel. So
And like with my style of teaching, it's like holding space for people to do those rebellious things. Or like one of the things, I'll have adult assistants with me in my class, and a lot of my students are super wild, and I love that there's a class for wild kids to be creative, have literary experiences, not sitting at a desk, not just to be free. And I have kids that are really climbing on stone walls over cliffs because we're in Fort Tryon Park, and climbing trees super high and scaling rocks. And it's my rule is I don't decide if you can do something or not.
Okay.
You can do it or you can't.
Right.
That's not up to me.
Right.
If you can balance on that wall, good for you. I am not going to hold you back.
Right.
I am not going to let my fear prevent you from developing this skill. That's really amazing. I'm not going to let my fear of heights interrupt your experience.
Have fear of heights?
I don't.
Oh, okay. I do.
No, I don't have fear of heights.
I'm not a climber.
No, I love climbing.
Do you?
Yeah.
Like for real? Like rock climbing?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I mean, like I'm not, I go hiking and backpacking, but I don't go rappelling. Okay. I would love to do that, but I just haven't had the, it's another expensive hobby.
Right.
but I just take my body out there and try all that stuff.
So tell me about the art in the book. Because you said photos.
There's one photo in the beginning of the book of me reaching into the water in this reflection, and the same photo is in the end of the book upside down because it's the reflection.
Right, reflection of it. Yeah.
So it's just this image that I really love. And
what's the photo from?
My sister took it. She is an incredible photographer.
Like a recent, or are you talking about?
Oh yeah, we did it for the book.
Right, got it.
You know, so we like did a photo shoot because we needed an author photo. And then we ended up just having fun, and I ended up wanting to use one of her pictures in the book. Right.
Are there photos from your youth or childhood?
Nope, they're from like in the fall.
No, I mean, are there any?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, part of me kind of wanted to do that. One of my friends, James Browning Keppel from the Browning Society in New York, he was like, your book is just poetry. You need some pictures in there. You need, you know. And I was kind of thinking about doing that, but it's poetry.
Right.
What am I going to, you know what I mean? It's a poetry book. And I want people to have their own pictures. They don't need to see what I looked like as a kid, even though part of me thinks that's fun and I want to do that. But just we have the poems. The poems are the photos and the paintings.
Right.
And it's poetry. They're doing it. They're doing the job. I don't need to overdo it. And my first, that book with the Three Rooms Press put out, Signature Play, that's my lyrical poetry. That's a multimedia book, and it does have art in it. It has QR codes, so you can hear me sing the poems.
That's cool.
It literally has the scores.
How can people find that?
On piano. It's available, Three Rooms Press, from their website or from Amazon. It's called Signature Play. Right. Jane LeCroy, that came out like 10 years ago, so it's really fun that now it's another 10 years. Right. And hopefully I'll even do more books. I am so appreciative of Pink Trees coming to me being like, we want to publish a book, and me being like, okay, like I have thousands of poems. Linda was amazing. I gave her a ton of poems. And she organized them into different themes.
That's a hard thing to do. It really is.
You need help. She really helped me. She made the book. I mean, I made the content, but she found the book in the content.
She's amazing.
I
totally respect her. She's amazing.
Really
she has so much energy, and I mean, they're in Kansas. I don't know if she still is, but she went to Kansas City.
To AWP.
She goes all over the place.
She does.
Constantly doing things.
She really inspires
And if
me.
she's going to organize an event, it's going to be organized.
Yes.
Some people invite you to an event, it's a bit of a mess. Mm-hmm. You know it's not going to be if Linda's involved. So you're lucky to have that.
Yeah, I feel so lucky. And Pink Trees Press, I love the other authors on it. I really like.
It's a great. It's a very, and everybody's different. It's not like. Which is a great way to go,
Yes.
Everybody has their own identity.
Real poets. They're just, they have their own voice and their own little style window that they're showing you the world through.
Exactly. And now they have you to do that too.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Right. And what was I going to say? I had a thought about that, but oh well.
The Spellbook of Ordinary Mistakes.
Right. Cool. I can't wait. So tell me about Iceberg.
Oh yeah, the Icebergs. The
Icebergs. I listened to some of it. This is I preparing for this. I went and checked it out. I really dug it. So
cool.
It's you're great. Obviously, you can tell, the listeners can tell by you here that you read musically, so it fits. Mm-hmm. It's very it's a bit edgy, and this is my interpretation. Funky. Right, you got a little funk going.
Yes,
and a little trippy at times.
Psychedelic edge, definitely.
Yeah, so all that. So it's your poetry, but how does the sound come about?
I write melodies. Mm-hmm. I sing my poems to. Really, it's Tom Abs, who's been my musical partner since college. Okay. We tried to get divorced a bunch of times. We totally hate each other. Oh. But we love each other, and we are always breaking up and getting back together. Right. It's just like a marriage.
Right.
And
since college.
Yes, since college. We started playing together in college. Right. It's insane. And I actually had like a musical crush on him. Like, he was the most incredible upright bass player. Okay. And I was super into him. And when I was in college, I had this boyfriend who was a trombone player. Wow. And he was in a band with this guy, Tom Abs. They would actually play at right on the corner of First and First. Oh. and it was called First and First or whatever, but it was this jazz club in the 90s that had really good avant-garde jazz and a lot of bebop, like for all the college kids like, that are discovering that stuff.
Right.
And I always wanted to play with Tom. He was just so amazing, but he was way out of my league. I could never do it. But I was always like a fan of his, going to all his shows. And then I had this band called Spook Engine. Okay. And it was huge, like with 15 people, but I would we were never all 15 playing at once. Right. Like I do some songs with these musicians, some songs with these musicians, and that band at the time, I really wanted a show at the Knitting Factory, but my poetry was popular, not my music. And Knitting Factory promised me, they were like, they loved my I hosted shows at Knitting Factory for a long time.
Oh. What kind of shows?
And we had this deal. They're regular music, singer-songwriter shows and stuff, and I would just introduce, keep it moving.
Right.
They weren't open mics, but they were like their showcases. Sure. So they were like, okay, if you host these gigs, whatever, you can have your own show in the main space.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was so excited for a whole year. Hosting is so much work. Yeah. Because you have to pay attention the whole show. It's not like just for your half-hour set.
And if something goes wrong, you got to figure deal with it.
You've got, and you're never actually performing. It's always just these tight little short things that you're holding everything together. Yeah, I've done it myself too. Yeah, it's really hard. Right. So I do this whole thing, and you can't drink or you can't relax because you really have to be paying attention. You know? So it's you're everyone's getting drunk around you, and you have to stay really on top of things, keep it moving, paying attention.
Otherwise, it'll be a mess.
Hold it together. Yeah. Exactly. So finally, I get a show in the main space of Knitting Factory, and I'm so excited. And at the time, my bass player and guitar player were married, and they were going through a divorce. Oh no! Right at this fucking show, and it was I
know what it's like to be in a band with married people.
God, it was just seriously, you guys, we finally are getting this, and the band isn't going to be able to play. It was God. So I could I have this killer spot, and I had the balls to call up Tom Abs.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, I was okay, who can put together a set in 3 days with me?
Oh, 3 days?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, jeez.
So I get together with Tom, and it was magic right away.
That's pretty impressive.
And we just worked out. I sang him a couple of my whatever. We just made up this thing. We actually ended up recording that show, and it is our first record.
Wow, that's awesome.
Jane and Tom are transmitting.
Probably had a really good energy because it was that. It
did. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah, and in fact, my band came. Wow. And they saw me with Tom, and I didn't have to say anything. It was after that, it was obvious that Tom. Right. That was it. Yeah. That was it. Right. Tom was going to be my musical partner. Right. And it was. Right. And then it's been me and Tom. Jane and Tom were transmitting for a bunch of years. Then we were, then we turned into the Icebergs once. We were always going through drummers. Right. Then David Rogers-Berry joined us.
They were Spinal Tap. They were blowing up. And
yeah, exactly. Also because Tom, his style of communication, and my band was always bass, drums, me. Right. Oh. No guitar. Okay. So, eventually we ended up adding a little guitar and stuff, but I really focused on. And then Tom at one point switched from upright bass to the cello because we were touring a lot, and the bass just doesn't fit in a car. Right. And then it was much cheaper to we'd have the bass neck sticking out of the window, but then it's not super noisy, idea. And we were ruining the car with tape, and I lost my favorite jacket because we were using it to stuff the hole, and it blew away and was waving to me down the highway, and I was crying, and, whatever.
We're almost out of time. So one thing I do want to do is I want to give a plug that you're going to, Pink Trees Press, the whole 6 fantastic people and poets are going to be working with me on the variety show that we're doing in Brooklyn. Yeah. The very swell variety show. It's the 3rd one. It's at Young Ethel's Saturday, March 16th from 3 to 5. So it's you guys. You're going to do split up into 2 sets. I have, you're going to like this. A songwriter club from St. Anne's High School.
Awesome.
All young women. They're going to perform a set. And then my group, the Bitter Pill Collective, is going to do a set. And then I have a comedian as a host, and my friend is a storyteller. So
that sounds great.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you have. So I usually read one, but I want to make sure you get a chance to read one, but two. So anything you want to make sure that people know about before we finish up? Have we
I'm the
covered mostly
resident
everything?
poet at Love Letter Lingerie Shop in Cold Spring, my sister's lingerie store, which is
Cold
pretty
Spring's
fun.
a beautiful town.
Yeah, it's
and what does that mean?
The resident poet at the shop.
Yeah.
It means
I mean, it's an actual lingerie shop.
Yeah, it's an actual lingerie shop.
That's not code
with
for something.
Professional bra fittings and
Nice.
like really gorgeous lingerie.
Okay.
But we also offer poetry services where we, I'll write a love poem for you or for anyone you love.
That's
or
awesome.
a love
To go with
letter.
the lingerie?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And she gives out my poems when people buy lingerie. You
Holy
always get
cow.
one of my poems in her. And she has my poems
That's unique.
in the store.
Wow.
And it's called Love Letter, so it has this
Right.
writing thing. And like
That's
even
really
just
cool.
the other day, we have this piece of shit but very cute red typewriter that hardly works. But that's part of its charm, is that it's all messed up.
Right.
So I type up poems live on the typewriter, doing typewriter poetry.
Actual typewriter?
Yes,
That's funny, 'cause
manual typewriter.
Me and my wife were talking about typewriters when we were at the fanzine show. I'm like wondering if anybody still uses them.
Yeah, they do. It's just like vinyl or
Right.
any.
Is it electric or manual?
Manual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like old school? A real old
school.
one?
I mean, no, it's a new one from
They
China
still,
that's crap.
They still make them.
Yeah, they do.
Wow.
Poorly.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I don't recommend it. Luckily,
Right.
my husband's an engineer
Cool.
and messed with it so that it got it kind of working.
All right. Good.
But
good
the
thing.
letters are all wonky and not
Right.
in a line, and they keep skipping spaces. It's just like really messed up.
Wow.
But it's still cool.
Yeah. Do you have a short one you could read before we go?
Oh yeah, sure. Maybe I'll sing something.
Oh, that's even better. Well, not better.
Let me think of like, what would be a good.
You think of it. I'm going to read mine.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I was trying to think of what to watch on TV, and I saw scrolling through, and Nosferatu came up, and I thought about watching it, but it was colorized, and I didn't want to watch it colorized. Right. And I wound up writing a vampire poem. It's called Sinister Ending. Her sharp teeth pierced the skin of her victim's neck, a young woman no more than 21, who writhed in shock, lying face down on the cold, damp cobblestone, Meatpacking District, late winter's night, 12:10 a.m. A neighborhood familiar with the scent of blood, but this animalistic ritual that goes back a century or more. Survival at night, blood coursing through veins hardened by eternal life. The victim, her name was Josie. No one said her name as her body became lifeless. She died alone under a street light and a moon obscured by a city that was darker, colder than usual on this fateful night. Josie's family would never come to understand the sinister ending of their daughter, sister, and grandchild.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't usually write like that. Just that came about. Mm-hmm. So sing.
All right.
Sing on demand.
Sing on demand. What would be a good song to follow that? All right, since it has the vampire in it. Seen her moving in the shadows, seen her swinging on the gate, seen her blowing glass like nightmares, seen her filling bowls with teeth, seen her walking on the street light, seen her hanging on the line, seen her climbing with the ivy, seen her, see her all the time. She's the tooth fairy come to kill me, sitting like a gargoyle on the roof. Hear her hair click like a wind chime, each strand tied up with a tooth. Seen her peeking in my window, seen her listening at my door, Seen her, braid in fiber optics, seen her, see her more and more. She's flying, looking like an angel until you see her whip close. She is a wicked, dreamy creature, skin broke, lonesome as a ghost. She takes teeth to keep her company, listens to the strange bone melody. She's the tooth fairy come to kill me, sitting like a gargoyle on the roof. Hear her hair click like a wind chime, each strand tied up with a tooth. Her smooth gums gleam with no teeth between, lisping, you are mine, 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 mine. River bones near the tongue, river bones root to the gum. Watch for what she slips beneath your pillow, you'll miss what she takes from your mouth. River bones near the tongue, river bones root to the gum. Watch for what she slips beneath your pillow, you'll miss what she takes from your mouth.
Wow. That's pretty unbelievable. Well, we have to end the show, and that was a great way to end it. Very dramatic and intense.
The Tooth Fairy.
Wow. Is that anywhere?
The Tooth Fairy? Yeah, actually, it's in the the Three Rooms Press book.
Okay.
Signature play.
Well, you've been just an unbelievably fantastic guest, Jane.
You're this is great. We can hang out all the time.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Jane LeCroy, for being on the show, and watch out for all the great stuff she is part of. You've been listening to Storytelling on Orchard Street. Pete Salamita, and I had a great time. I'm sure all of you that stuck around also have had one too. So we'll see you some other time. Adios.
Bye.
Bye-bye.